Let's talk some more about the kind of content that you should be thinking about creating for your client. But first, I want to introduce you to something. Not my computer. I want to introduce you to this. This that you can see on my screen, and I will actually probably cut to a screenshot so you can see closer, but it's definitely going to be attached as part of the resources, is a matrix I created called the conversation continuum. And what it does in 3 lines, here and here and here, it shows in very simple terms, well, like I said, I'll show you this to you properly, but you get your relationship, buying process, platform of choice. In other words, it shows the state of mind and the buying stage that a person's going through. And it sort of shows that the stages that a person goes through when they're actually looking to, shall we say, purchase a product or service. They go through things like awareness. They realize they have a problem. Let me give you an example. Somebody wakes up and says, I have a headache. Okay, so now they're aware they have a headache, okay? Then they say, well, I have a headache, and here's a takeaway, okay? This is key, actually. I've been teaching this to students for about, 5 years now. With the answer, what was the question? If you were the answer, what was the question? Okay? Now, that's fantastic if you're doing social media for yourself, but if you're doing it for a client, you have to think to yourself, if the client was the answer, if the product, service, gizmo, gadget, whatever it is that the client offers, whatever product or service, if that thing was the answer, what was the question? So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you were writing social media about an iPhone. So if iPhone is the answer, what was the question? Okay? If you were writing social media about a florist, what was the question? If you were writing social media for a chiropractor, or let's say an automotive technician or a garage in the area, what was the question? Okay? So you always got to be looking, if you were the answer, what was the question? Now, bearing that in mind, you need to understand that the question, or at least the kinds of information that a person asks when they're looking to solve something, it varies depending on where they are in this thing called the arc, the buying process. And at the beginning, they wake up and they go, oh, I have a headache, or something. So let's use that example. I have a headache. So now we have awareness. And they're at the beginning of the buying process. And they think to themselves, well, I need to find a solution. So what happens next is that they start to describe their problem using their own language or their own frame of reference. So, and this is sort of SEO 101, if you will, but it applies to social media as well. It goes like this. Somebody goes online and starts, say, typing into a search engine and says, I have a headache. My head hurts. Something like pain relief for headaches. They generally start to use phrases that describe what they believe their problem to be. Now, this is important, okay? Over the years, I've worked with lots of different small businesses, quite a few large businesses, and a good handful of medium-sized businesses. And they all suffer from something called proximity blindness. They're too darn close to the problem, and they've lost perspective. I once worked with an automotive service technician, actually a suite of them. And this isn't Goodyear, by the way. Those guys are awesome. These are the independents. And they were really good guys. I mean, they really knew their stuff. But they insisted on referring to themselves as an automotive service technician. And I kept saying, like, dude, nobody calls you that. You're a mechanic. He's like, no, I'm a highly skilled automotive technician. And I turned around and I said, you can call yourself whatever you want, but do you want to be like really, do you want to be righteous or do you want to be right? Do you want to be found? Do you want to be, you want people talking to you, or do you just want to sit there with a really kind of snazzy name? And this client really dug his heels in, so I think I came up with an example to try and get him to understand just how dopey this idea was. And I said, so you're suggesting that I needed to, if I was going to maybe work with an individual in a different sector, I would refer to them as a transparent wall technician. He said, what the hell is a transparent wall technician? I said, a transparent wall technician, my friend, is a window cleaner. I think the penny dropped at that point. Oh. I said, yeah. When was the last time anyone wandered up to you and said, hey Bob, do you know any transparent wall technicians? Nobody ever asks you, do they? I said, so when was the last time somebody wandered up to you and said, I'm looking for a good automotive service technician? And he went, I see. Yeah, I'm a mechanic. I said, you know what? You are an automotive service technician, but your customers refer to you as a mechanic. Like, you know, I get called the damnedest things, quite frankly. When a person describes their problem, they describe it in terms that make sense to them, not what makes sense to you. And the reason I'm belaboring this point is when you're working with your clients, especially when you're creating social media, you need to be thinking that way. Which means part of your task is to understand the language, and you can do that with about half an hour's research on the internet. You can just generally go and search, and you'll get to see the way people describe it. You can visit sites like Quora and ask or answers, and you can generally get a sense of how people describe the problems.